Are we one step closer to peace in Ukraine? Well, Berlin was at the center of potentially decisive diplomatic talks for 2 days when Ukrainian and US negotiators came together to discuss how to potentially achieve peace, joined by many European leaders. We now have a list of security guarantees put pen to paper that are meant to reassure Ukraine that its partners and allies have its back in guaranteeing its security. But there are still some important sticking points that need to be resolved, particularly the question over territory, where we see the two sides still very far apart. And we also don't know whether Russia's Vladimir Putin is going to be willing to even agree to any kind of peace deal. And this has many people out there skeptical. Now, to discuss the outcomes of these 2 days of diplomacy in Berlin, I spoke to Jürgen Hardt. He is the foreign policy spokesperson for the conservative CDU-CSU. Thank you for being here with me. Mr. Hardt, we've heard it from US President Donald Trump. We've heard it from German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. We seem to be at the closest point to possibly reaching a peace for Ukraine since Russia's invasion there started. How do you see it?
Looking back 4 weeks ago, I would not imagine that we have such a result today on the table, where United States of America, Ukraine and the European states, NATO member states and European Union member states are staying so close together on that question. And the message to Putin is, this is a common position of the, so to say, Western world together with Ukraine. Please decide to accept, because something better you will not have on the table. And hopefully the US President is also mentioning this position to Moscow. The decision now needs to be taken in Moscow, but the preparation was very well and a big success, by the way, also for the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz.
So you're optimistic that this is a first step towards an actual peace agreement?
An actual peace agreement needs the support also from Putin. What we saw in the past was that he didn't want to go only 1 millimeter into the direction of Ukraine or the Western world. He felt encouraged by the behavior of the US President, who was irritating its partners in the Western world and in Ukraine. But we said what we saw yesterday, inclusive the video conference with the US President and the others, around 10 heads of state in the German Chancellery. I am optimistic that we now have a common position that is durable, and that Putin thinks about that probably if he will not agree on, the Western world will increase its military support for Ukraine, which makes it more difficult for Putin to reach its military goals. And therefore he should now take what is on the table. It's more than he should get, but to have peace for the people in Ukraine, I think we can accept such a result.
We've seen a statement put out by European leaders with a list of security guarantees that Europeans and the US are willing to offer Ukraine. That includes a European-led multinational force, which would include troops being on the ground in Ukraine after a peace is achieved. Do you really see European troops going to Ukraine?
What we need is first a ceasefire, then we need an agreement on the border question, where Ukraine itself has to take the final decisions on that. And then we have the security measures around, and I think Germany will not stand away, not go away if our support is needed. For us Europeans, it's important that US are also in on that concept. We need US, especially also concerning intelligence, which the US has capabilities in that intelligence we don't have in Europe. Therefore, it's necessary to have American support for that, so to say, peace troop. But at the end, 800,000 Ukrainian soldiers are the best guarantee for freedom and independence of Ukraine. And 800,000 is more than most of the NATO in Europe has.
We haven't yet heard a resounding yes coming from Germany in terms of taking part in this multinational force and for German troops to actually be on the ground in Ukraine to guarantee peace and security. Do you see that happening anytime soon?
I think that the CDU-CSU group in the Deutsche Bundestag and also the Bundestag as a whole, tomorrow when the Chancellor gives his government statement on the European Union summit, upcoming European Union summit, there will be a broad support for that plan. And part of that plan is this question of security guarantees for Ukraine, and Germany will not stand against that. But on the other hand, if there is no peace, we also will have no measures to secure the peace, and therefore the first step is now to convince Russia and the Russian president to support.
We've also seen in the statement by European leaders that they have pointed down a legally binding commitment to restore peace and security if Ukraine were to be attacked again after a peace agreement. Do you see this legally binding element coming to fruition, especially in a country like the United States?
I think what is on the table now is something close to Article 5 obligations in NATO. But we have to state, if Russia will not keep peace in Ukraine and will only formally accept the plan and not in reality, the war will go on, and therefore we then will support Ukraine as strong as it needed. And I hope that European Union finds a decision on Thursday to mobilize the frozen assets of Russia to make sure that Ukraine has enough money to finance its military forces in 26 and also in 27. And this signal from Brussels is also very necessary now, because it helps a lot to strengthen the position of the Western world towards Putin.
Do you think the US, and in particular the President Donald Trump, will stick to what was agreed here in Berlin, or we've seen it happen before, will he flip-flop and change his mind?
We had the speech of Vice President Merz in February in Munich. We had the national security strategy on the table, and we have the 28 bullet point paper 4 weeks ago, which was irritating. But I have no doubt that we can trust the US President, what he said yesterday to the heads of state in the Chancellery via video, and Witkoff and Kushner, his two ambassadors on that question. They are also strongly committed to that plan, and therefore I'm optimistic that the alliance between US, Ukraine and the European states is sustainable, and also a strong word to Putin.
One big question that remains open, you've mentioned it, on Ukraine is the territorial issue. You've said this is up to Ukraine to decide, but we've heard that also in these talks there might still be pressure coming from the US for Ukraine to give up territory that it holds in Donetsk, something that Ukraine absolutely does not want to do. Do you think this whole process could come crashing because of this territorial issue not being resolved?
This is one of the most crucial points, not decided in the paper from yesterday evening, because we are convinced that only Ukrainian president and Ukrainian parliament can take such a decision. By the way, also the constitution of Ukraine makes it necessary that the Rada is agreeing on that. And it would be a pity if Putin reaches some more territory in Ukraine than he has reached by military activity. In 25, Putin only conquered 4,500 square kilometers extra compared to 24. This is only 0.77% of the territory of Ukraine. A victory looks totally different, and he lost 250,000 soldiers wounded or dead. And therefore it's also for him a question now to jump into a solution which is face-saving also for him towards his people in Russia, and not to continue the war. But therefore, I see also possibilities for compromises on the Russian side on their territorial question. And by the way, the question is not to give up territory on a basis of international law. The question is who controls some parts of the Ukraine in the future. Is it the Ukrainian government or is it something in between? And this needs to be negotiated.
So do you think that Russia would be willing to agree to a peace, or do you think, like other observers see it, that Putin just wants to continue the war and that any effort to achieve peace are not going to end up anywhere?
I fear that there's a huge risk that Putin will not accept. But on the other hand, for us in the Western world, it's clear that in case that Putin does not agree on that plan, we come to a point where we have a more common position on supporting Ukraine also in the future, hopefully also with US, and this is a change compared to that what we had some weeks ago.
And one point, we've heard Chancellor Friedrich Merz recently say that he believes the era of Pax Americana is over, that the US guaranteeing security also for its partners in Europe, that is over, and that Europe really now needs to take it all in its own hands. How do you view this message coming from the Chancellor? Is it really a moment of reaching awareness for European countries that they have to take care of things on their own?
We have to be aware that this might be the case, but looking to the strategy of the US president, especially the nuclear question, the nuclear umbrella for allies, is mentioned there. Maybe we will have discussions about who pays for it, who is organizing it, but I didn't see a fundamental shift away from NATO by US, and we should not lift the bridge from our side, and therefore I'm convinced it makes sense to try to keep the NATO close together in conventional but also nuclear deterrence.
Jürgen Hardt, thank you very much for speaking to us.
It was a pleasure.